The Widow of Vicksburg, 1863. Most chilling Civil War-era true crime stories in America. Some stories are buried by time. Some are erased by war. This is the true crime story of a woman who walked free while others were buried. Stay with us and subscribe, because the most dangerous secrets are the ones history never solved. The man was already dead when they opened the bedroom door. His body lay stiff on the bed, his face pale and turned slightly toward the window. Outside, the sounds of Vicksburg still echoed with war. Distant cannon fire, marching boots, the low cry of hunger. But inside that room, everything was quiet. Too quiet. Standing near the foot of the bed was his wife. She did not scream. She did not faint. She only pressed a hand to her chest and whispered that she had just lost another husband. This was the third time. 3 marriages, 3 funerals, 4 years. By 1863, people in Vicksburg were no longer whispering her name. They were afraid to say it out loud. They called her the Widow of Vicksburg. And this time, even in a city used to death, something felt wrong. The doctor leaned close to the body. No wounds, no blood, no signs of battle. The man had gone to sleep, healthy and strong. By morning, he was gone. The widow said he complained of stomach pain the night before. She said she gave him tea. She said she stayed by his side until he stopped breathing. But as the doctor stood up, he noticed something strange. The cup on the bedside table still smelled bitter. And outside the house, neighbors had already gathered. They were counting. 1 husband, 2 husbands, now 3. And all of them left her richer than before. As soldiers passed through the street and the Union guns thundered in the distance, one question spread faster than fear. How many men would have to die before the war was no longer the most dangerous thing in Vicksburg? And just as the doctor opened his mouth, the widow turned to him and said something that froze the room. She asked when the body could be buried. That was the moment the city began to watch her. But to understand how it came to this, you have to go back to the beginning. Back before the sieges, back before the hunger, back before she became the most feared woman in Vicksburg. Vicksburg, Mississippi was already a city built on survival. By the early 60s, it stood high above the Mississippi River, proud and stubborn. When the Civil War reached its doors, the city became a prize both sides wanted. Supplies ran thin, food became precious, death became normal. Widows were everywhere, but she stood apart. Her first husband was a river worker, a strong man who hauled goods along the Mississippi. They married quietly, without celebration. War was coming, and joy felt dangerous. When he died suddenly in 1861, people blamed sickness, fever, bad water. The river took many men. She cried at the funeral. She wore black. She accepted sympathy. And she inherited everything he owned. No one questioned it. In those days, death moved fast. People moved on. So did she. Less than a year later, she remarried. Her second husband was older, a shop owner struggling to keep his business alive as the war drained the city. He needed help. She offered it. Neighbors said she was kind. She cooked. She listened. She made him feel safe. For a while, it seemed like the marriage worked. Then he fell ill. It started with pain, sharp cramps, weakness. The doctor said it was food poisoning or stress. War made men sick. He died within days. Again, she wept. Again, she buried him quickly. Again,
his property passed to her. That was when people began to talk. Not loudly, not yet, just enough to notice a pattern. Still, no law was broken, no proof existed, and in wartime Mississippi, there were bigger worries. Then came 1863, the siege of Vicksburg. Union forces surrounded the city, bombs fell day and night, people lived in caves to escape shells, rats became food, children starved. Death was everywhere. And in the middle of all this, the widow married again. Her third husband was a former Confederate soldier, injured, tired, looking for peace. He moved into her home just weeks before the siege tightened. Some said he was foolish, some said he was lucky. At first, he survived the bombs, he survived the hunger, he survived the war. But he did not survive his wife. One night, he complained of pain. She gave him tea. By morning, he was dead. This time, the city could not ignore it. 3 husbands dead, 3 estates inherited, no children, no witnesses. And now, with the city cut off and fear thick in the air, suspicion became dangerous. The doctor who examined the body had seen poison before. He knew the signs. But accusing a woman during wartime without proof could tear a city apart. Still, rumors spread. Some said she bought rat poison. Some said she learned about herbs from enslaved women. Some said she smiled too soon after funerals. The truth was harder. Records from Mississippi newspapers of the time show no formal charge, no arrest, no trial. But they also show something else. After the 3rd burial, no man in Vicksburg would court her. Doors closed when she passed, conversations stopped, mothers pulled sons away from her path. She became a living ghost. And then, just weeks later, something happened that changed everything. A neighbor fell ill after sharing a meal in her home. He lived. And what he told the doctor would finally push the Widow of Vicksburg into the full light of suspicion. But before anyone could confront her, the city itself collapsed. On July 4th, 1863, Vicksburg surrendered. Union troops marched in, records vanished, people scattered, justice dissolved into survival, and the widow disappeared into the chaos. Some say she fled south, some say she changed her name, some say she married again. No one ever proved her guilt, but no one ever forgot her either. And just when the city thought the story had ended, a single document surfaced years later, one that suggested her trail did not end in Vicksburg at all. It ended somewhere far more dangerous. And in the next chapter, we follow that trail. Because the war may have ended in 1865, but the Widow of Vicksburg was not done yet. They thought the war had erased her. When Union soldiers marched through Vicksburg and the city finally surrendered, records were burned, homes abandoned, and people scattered like ash in the wind. In that chaos, the Widow of Vicksburg disappeared. No goodbye, no trail, just an empty house and 3 fresh graves behind her. For a time, people believed that was the end of her story. They were wrong. The next confirmed sighting came months later, far from the ruined hills of Mississippi. In a small river town downstream, a woman arrived alone, dressed in mourning black, carrying letters of recommendation and money no one could explain. She gave a new name. She spoke softly. She said she had lost everything to the war. And men believed her. What they didn't know was that the pattern had already begun again. The town was quieter than Vicksburg, untouched by heavy fighting. people welcomed strangers. They needed new workers, new hope, new stories that were not about cannon fire and graves.
She rented a modest room. She attended church. She listened more than she spoke. And she watched. Within weeks, she caught the attention of a local widower. He was a river clerk, not wealthy, but steady. He brought her food. He fixed things around her room. He asked questions about her past, and she answered only enough to sound tragic. Neighbors later said she looked fragile, like someone who needed protection. They did not see danger. They saw opportunity. They married quietly. This time there was no rush, no sudden sickness, no quick funeral. She waited. Months passed. People relaxed. The whispers never reached this town. The war had scattered stories too far for rumors to follow easily. Then one night, the clerk collapsed after supper. The pain was immediate. He screamed, he clawed at his stomach. By morning, he was dead. The doctor blamed spoiled meat. She wept louder than before. But this death did not go unnoticed. Because unlike wartime Vicksburg, this town still had order. And this time, someone was paying attention. The doctor who signed the death certificate noticed the same signs he had seen during the war, the same smell, the same sudden failure of the body. He asked questions. She answered calmly, too calmly. He did not accuse her, but he remembered. Within days, word spread quietly among officials. Not gossip, concern. They began asking about her past. That was when the truth started to surface. A clerk searching shipping records found her original name. Another recognized the description from an old Mississippi paper. A third remembered hearing stories during the siege of Vicksburg about a woman who buried husbands like soldiers. Still, there was no proof, no poison bottle, no witness, no confession. And once again, she inherited everything. But this time, the town did something different. They watched her. She felt it. Eyes lingered longer than usual. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. Men stopped calling. The widow realized something had changed. So she did what she had always done best. She left. Her next move was bolder. Instead of hiding in small towns, she traveled where records were weak and faces changed often. Post-war America was full of such places. Rail lines expanding, boom towns rising, cities crowded with strangers. She followed the money, and she followed the wounded. Veterans, widowers, men broken by war who wanted comfort. She offered it. Her method was always the same. Kindness first, patience second, control last. She cooked, she listened, she made herself necessary, and when the moment was right, she used what many women of the time knew, but few dared to use. Household poisons, rat poison, arsenic, substances sold freely, without question. Death did not always come fast. Sometimes it took days. And in those days, she never left their side. That was part of why no one suspected her. A murderer does not sit by the bed. A murderer does not cry. A murderer does not pray. But she did all three. By the late 1860s, reports of similar deaths began appearing in different states. Widowers dying suddenly. Wills changed shortly before death. A quiet woman in black leaving town soon after. No one connected the dots at first. America was still healing. Law enforcement was local. Communication was slow. She depended on that. But history leaves fingerprints. Years later, a Mississippi judge reviewing old probate files noticed something strange. The same handwriting appeared on multiple wills across different counties. The same phrasing, the same witnesses, people who could no longer be found. It led back to Vicksburg, back to 1863, back to the widow. The judge reopened the files, quietly. But before anything could be done, the trail went cold again. No arrest was ever made, no trial ever held. Officially, she never existed as a criminal, but unofficially, her name passed into warning. Mothers told daughters never to trust grief too quickly. Men joked nervously about marrying widows in black. Doctors began recognizing poison symptoms more seriously. She changed behavior forever without ever standing in court. And then, a final report appeared. A death certificate from 1869. A man found dead beside a river road, married only weeks earlier. His wife, listed as deceased as well, claimed to have died suddenly days later. But no grave was ever found for her. Some believe she faked her death. Some believe someone finally caught her. Some believe she simply moved on again. What is certain is this: the Widow of Vicksburg was not just a woman who survived war. She was someone who learned how to hide inside it. And as America rebuilt itself, she disappeared into the cracks of history, leaving behind unanswered deaths, broken families, and a name people still speak carefully, even now.
Because the most dangerous killers are not always the loud ones. Sometimes they wear black, and sometimes they never stop. And in the next chapter, we will confront the final question that history could never answer. Did the Widow of Vicksburg ever face justice? Or did she die free, carrying her secrets to the grave? The grave was empty. That was the first thing they noticed. The wooden marker stood at the head of the plot, weathered and cracked, bearing her final name and a date that said she was dead. But when the ground was opened years later, there was nothing inside. No bones, no coffin, no trace of a body. If she had truly died in 1869, she should have been there. Instead, the hole held only silence. That discovery shattered the last comfort people had held on to, that the Widow of Vicksburg was finally gone. Because if the grave was empty, then it meant only one thing: she had escaped again. The discovery came quietly, almost by accident. A new owner bought the land near the river road where her last husband had supposedly died. While clearing space for crops, workers struck old wood. Curious, they dug deeper. What they found raised questions that had slept for decades. The local sheriff reviewed the death record. It was thin. No doctor's full report, no witnesses listed, no family claimed the body. Only a signature. And that signature matched the handwriting found on the old Vicksburg wills. By then, the Civil War was history. Reconstruction had passed. America had changed. But her shadow had not. Officials reopened everything they could find: marriage licenses, probate papers, shipping logs, church registries. What they uncovered was not a single woman, but many names tied to one pattern. Always a widow, always newly married, always a sudden illness, always money left behind, always disappearance. She never stayed long enough to be caught. She never killed the same way twice. Sometimes it was a slow sickness. Sometimes it was sudden collapse. Sometimes it looked like natural failure. And always, she mourned perfectly. No witnesses ever saw her angry. No one ever saw her violent. No one ever heard her threaten a soul. That is what made her invisible. In the 1800s, people believed danger came from men with knives or guns. They did not expect it to come from a woman holding a teacup. Especially not during a time when death was already everywhere. The judge who had reopened the Vicksburg files wrote one final note in the margin of his records: "She survives by being overlooked." That sentence became the quiet truth of her life. Stories spread after that. Some claimed she was seen in Arkansas. Others swore she reached as far as Ohio. A few believed she remarried one last time under a different name and lived peacefully until old age. No proof confirmed any of it. But something else happened. The way people treated widows began to change. Doctors grew suspicious of sudden stomach illnesses. Courts demanded stronger proof for wills signed near death. Poisons became harder to buy without reason. Her crimes, though never punished, reshaped how society protected itself. In a way, She forced the world to learn from her. Yet the most chilling part was not how many men may have died. It was how easily she blended in. She never looked dangerous. She never acted cruel. She followed every rule that society expected from a grieving woman. And that made her untouchable. By the time her story faded from newspapers and courtrooms, it had turned into something darker than a crime. It became a warning. Not all monsters shout. Not all killers run. Some wait patiently and let the world lower its guard. To this day, no photograph of her is confirmed, no diary found, no confession recorded. Only patterns, only gaps, only the empty grave. And that is where her story ends. Not with a trial, not with a hanging, not with justice, but with uncertainty. Because somewhere between 1863 and 1869, during the bloodiest chapter of American history, a woman learned how to kill without ever being named a murderer. And she walked away. And as long as her true fate remains unknown, one question still echoes from Vicksburg to this day. How many husbands did she really bury before she finally disappeared forever? The silence after her disappearance was louder than any accusation. Years passed, towns rebuilt, new families moved into old homes. The war became something people talked about in the past tense. But every so often, when records were reviewed or old wills were examined, her shadow returned. It always started the same way. A clerk would pause, a judge would frown, a doctor would reread a note, and someone would say, "This feels familiar." By the early 1870s, America was trying to make sense of the chaos the Civil War had left behind. Courts wanted order again, laws became stricter, paper trails mattered more. That was when her story almost came back to life. In a courthouse far from Vicksburg, an official compared several probate files from different states. He noticed the same careful language in each, the same calm handwriting, the same witnesses who never appeared again. It was not proof, but it was enough to reopen old fears. The problem was simple. You cannot arrest a ghost. No one knew her real name anymore. Every identity she had worn was legal at the time. Marriage records were real, death certificates were signed, wills were filed. She had done everything slowly, properly, and within the system. If she had been a man, suspicion might have come earlier. But society did not expect women to kill for profit, especially women who cried at funerals and prayed beside beds. That belief protected her better than any hiding place. Some officials tried to trace her last known movements. They followed rail schedules, river traffic, church guest books. The trail ended again and again. It was as if she understood something most criminals never did. If you leave before people ask questions, they never learn what to ask. As the years went on, her story slipped from legal concern into legend. People argued about her late at night. Some said she was misunderstood, a woman unlucky in love. Others believed she was a killer shaped by war, hunger, and loss. A few believed she never existed at all. But the records remain. 3 dead husbands in Vicksburg, multiple estates transferred, an empty grave, and a pattern that could not be explained away. By the late 1800s, the Widow of Vicksburg became something else, a cautionary tale. Parents warned sons not to rush into marriage. Doctors warned colleagues about stomach illness. Courts demanded more witnesses. Poison laws tightened. All because of a woman who was never convicted. In that way, she left a deeper mark than many criminals who were caught. She changed behavior. She changed fear. She changed trust. And still, the final truth stayed hidden. Did she live long enough to see the world change? Did she die quietly under another name?
Did someone finally recognize her and end the cycle? History doesn't answer. All it gives us is the echo of her footsteps moving from town to town, always just ahead of the law. And maybe that's the most disturbing part. Not that she killed, but that she proved how easy it was to disappear inside grief. Even now, when historians read Civil War records, they pause when they see her story. Not because of what's written, but because of what's missing. No arrest record, no confession, no ending. Just a woman in black walking away while a nation burned. And somewhere, long after the war ended, someone may have shared tea with her without ever knowing who she truly was. That's the legacy of the Widow of Vicksburg. A story without justice, a crime without closure, and a reminder that the most dangerous secrets are the ones history never solved. The last trace of her appeared where no one expected to find it. Not in a court file, not in a newspaper, not in a grave. It appeared in a letter. The letter was found decades later, folded inside an old Bible donated to a small church in Louisiana. The pages were worn thin, marked by years of use. Inside the back cover, written in careful, steady handwriting, was a short message dated 1871. It spoke of loss. It spoke of forgiveness. It spoke of a woman who had outlived every name she was ever given. The letter was signed with an initial only, no full name.
But historians who later studied it noticed something chilling. The handwriting matched. The same loops, the same spacing, the same calm control seen on wills from Vicksburg and beyond. If the letter was real, then it meant one thing. She was still alive after 1869. And she was no longer running. The letter described a quiet life, no husband mentioned, no town named, just a sense of relief, as if the writer believed the danger had finally passed. "I have buried enough," the letter read. "I will not take again." Some believe this was a confession. Others believe it was a lie, because there were still stories. In the years that followed, rumors continued to surface. A widow who arrived alone, a man who died suddenly, an inheritance that changed hands too quickly. Nothing was ever proven. What is certain is that she understood time better than anyone hunting her ever did. She knew memories fade. She knew witnesses die. She knew history forgets. By the time true crime became something people studied instead of feared, her trail was already cold. Today, historians argue about her existence. Some say she was one woman. Some say she was many stories blended into one. Some say the war itself created the myth. But the documents are real. The deaths are real. And the silence around her name is real. In Vicksburg, the house where her third husband died no longer stands. Floods and rebuilding erased it. But locals still tell the story quietly. Usually at night, usually with a warning tone. They say if you look at old cemeteries, you'll notice something strange. 3 graves close together, 3 men, 1 woman missing. No marker, no date, no proof she ever stayed. And that absence speaks louder than any stone. Because if justice had come, there would be records. If she had been innocent, there would be answers. Instead, there was only the space she left behind. The Widow of Vicksburg was not remembered because she was caught. She was remembered because she was not. She lived at the edge of a broken system during a time when death was normal and questions were dangerous. She learned how to move through sorrow without leaving fingerprints. And she may have walked away believing she had won. But history has a way of following. Even now, more than a century later, people still ask her question. Who was she really? And how many times did she pour tea knowing exactly what would happen next? That is where her story rests. Not with certainty, but with unease. And as long as that unease remains,
the Widow of Vicksburg will never truly be gone, because some stories do not end. They wait. The truth is, history did not defeat her. Time did. By the late 1800s, the world that allowed the Widow of Vicksburg to exist was disappearing. Laws changed. Doctors learned more. Poisons were controlled. Records became harder to erase. Marriage was no longer a private act hidden inside churches and small towns. The cracks she once slipped through began to close. But none of that brought justice. It only meant that if she was still alive, she had finally become ordinary. No more weddings, no more funerals, no more sudden illnesses. Just a woman growing older under a name no one questioned. And that may have been her greatest escape. Because people expect monsters to be dramatic. They expect endings. They expect punishment. She gave them none. There was no final victim that shocked the nation. No courtroom scene, no rope, no cell, no headline that said she was finally caught. Instead, she faded. That is why her story still unsettles people. Not because of what she did, but because of how quietly she stopped. Historians who study Civil War crime agree on one thing. If she had been born later, she would have been caught. If she had acted faster, she would have been noticed. If the war had covered her steps, she would not have survived. But history does not deal in if. It deals with what remains. And what remains is this.
3 husbands buried in Vicksburg. A pattern repeated across states. An empty grave. A letter that may or may not be a confession. And a woman who understood grief better than anyone watching her. The Widow of Vicksburg did not need violence. She used patience. She used trust. She used the simple belief that a woman in mourning could never be dangerous. That belief protected her more than any weapon. Today, her story lives on because it has no ending. And stories without endings stay with us longer. They sit in the mind. They return at night. They make us question what we think we know about people. Because if someone like her could walk freely through one of the most violent periods in American history, then how many others were never seen at all? That is the final legacy of the Widow of Vicksburg. Not fear, not guilt, but doubt. And as long as that doubt exists, her shadow remains, silent, patient, and untouched by the law. And that is where this story ends. If this story stayed in your mind, there are more waiting. More forgotten crimes, more hidden truths. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next story history tried to erase. Because some killers were never caught, and their stories deserve to be told.